Joining us now, look who's here, Congressman French Hill from House Financial Services, along with Stifel Chief Economist Lindsey Piegza. It's great to have you both on. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. First to you, Congressman, your reaction to Edward Lawrence's report. Why is the government's answer to everything the blunt force of a government hammer on things like price controls?
Liz, great to be with you. Isn't that ridiculous? Think about that. We're going back to the Nixon, Ford, and Carter administrations, thinking that price controls are some kind of magic way to control inflation, or a windfall profits tax, or Joe Biden's proposal to increase taxes on oil and gas producers by $145 billion. None of these things will work. None of these things will increase production or lower the price of oil at the pump for American families.
You know, to the congressman's point, Lindsey, you've been really sharp on what's driving inflation. The president is talking about short-term fixes like a federal gas tax holiday. Lindsey, even then Senator Barack Obama mocked this as gimmicks. I'm going to show that in the next segment. But I want your reaction to Treasury Secretary Yellen saying that opening up Keystone pipeline is also just a, quote, short-term fix. Watch this.
But with that said, would you consider reopening the presidential permit for the Keystone XL pipeline?
Well, that's up to the president to consider. I don't think it's something that, even if it were allowed, would take years to come into completion. So I don't see it as a short-term measure to address the current situation.
So we're also talking about 11,000 jobs here, right? So this is all just rounding errors, just not good enough, just short-term measures. Your reaction, Lindsey?
Well, to her point, I think that is a longer-term investment strategy, but we need short-term reprieve as well as long-term pathway to sustainable energy production. So in the near term, we could take some emergency measures that the government often implements in the aftermath of natural disasters, such as hurricanes, to increase domestic energy production. But longer term, we could also change our energy policies to encourage investment in infrastructure, such as pipelines, but also have more frequent and predictable lease sales. And a number of regulations could also be reversed to allow more capital to flow into the industry. So I do think that Chair Yellen was correct in saying that the Keystone pipeline will not give consumers immediate relief tomorrow, but there are pathways that the president can take to provide that short-term relief, as well as longer-term policy implementation that could put the infrastructure in place so we don't run into this problem yet again down the road.
Yeah, turn on the U.S. energy spigots. Congressman, there's also this. U.S. Treasury Secretary Larry Summers, he's out with this shocker of a fix to inflation, that millions need to lose their jobs to contain inflation. He's talking a one-year spike to 10% unemployment. Then he's saying 2 years of 7.5% joblessness. Doesn't this, by the way, this is so out there. People are saying this is crazy. And also, doesn't this violate Congress's dual mandate for the Fed, maximum employment and stable prices? What do you think of this idea?
Well, Larry Summers has been right for months in urging the Biden administration not to spend so much money increasing demand. He urged the Federal Reserve to start shrinking its balance sheet and raise interest rates months and months ago. So Larry Summers has been right heretofore. What he's countering today, I think, is the stark contrast that when you keep spending money that you don't have.
Wait a minute. He's talking about getting rid of jobs. The Democrats' shutdowns, we already wiped out 22 million jobs that we're just now clawing back. Do we really want to get rid of jobs to contain inflation?
Well, I think what he's arguing, Liz, is that because you let this run in fiscal policy at the Biden administration and kept printing money at the Fed, you've got to raise interest rates sharply. He's assuming that means a large increase in unemployment. What Jay Powell's trying to do is have it both ways, have his cake and eat it too, which is minimize the impact on employment while he tries to drown out inflationary expectations.
You know, there's a seismic shift, Lindsey. I want your reaction to what Larry Summers is saying in the context of this. Charles Cook is saying in the National Review that Florida is no longer a swing state. That so many voters in Florida are fleeing the Democrat Party. It's no longer purple, it's red. What do you say?
Well, I think right now voters are recognizing that the earlier policies of the Biden administration did contribute to the shortfall that the economy is facing right now. Rising prices at the pump, at the grocery store, are making it very difficult for the average American household or average small business in this country to survive. And so we don't need more of the same. We need different policies. But in terms of what the Federal Reserve can do, I think Larry Summers is pointing out the fact that the Fed has very limited control over the inflationary pressures that we're seeing in the economy at this point, because the vast majority stems from supply side constraints or variables that are outside the Fed's control. So if in fact the Fed wants to bring down prices more than they otherwise would be able to with traditional monetary policy metrics, they're going to have to force a very severe recession, which to Larry Summers' point would then result in elevated unemployment.
Yeah, I mean, how about strengthening the dollar? You know, I mean, by the way, let's watch the president's daughter stepping in to save the president after he loses it on a reporter. And you're going to see the president make another blunder. Watch this.
Have you made up your mind on China tariffs, sir?
We're in the process of doing that.
You're lifting the tariffs?
We're in the process of making up my mind. I promise.
Recession's even more likely than ever.
Come on, don't make things up, okay? Now you sound like a Republican politician. I'm joking. That was a joke. But all kidding aside, no, I don't think it is. One of the things that you may recall that I initiated was the international flat tax
No more.
provision.
No more.
And we got 140 some nations to sign on to it. I'm coming. This is my son Bo's oldest daughter, and she's trying to tell me, Dad, Grandpa, Pop, get going.
Okay, we are in the process of making up my mind. So there's a committee. Who's the committee of we in the president's mind? By the way, who knew that he was for an international flat tax?
Oh, I don't even know what to say to that, Liz. I mean, it's like he's using Kamala Harris as speechwriter. I mean, it's just another nonsensical comment from our president. He's not for a global flat tax. President Trump is the one who reformed international taxes in such a way that brought $1 trillion home, increased investment here, and we now have the highest level of corporate tax revenues in the history of the country.
You know, to the congressman's point, right? So, Lindsey, your final word. You're right. The Federal Reserve can't fix gas prices, right? The Federal Reserve can't fix the supply chain or like the baby formula shortage. Even the president invoked the Defense Production Act to get more baby formula supplies, but the store shelves are still empty. The way to get out of this is you do not shut down entire sectors and threaten U.S. companies like the airlines or the U.S. energy sector. You should unleash the power of the U.S. economy to get rid of inflation. What do you think? Final word.
Absolutely. I think many of the fiscal policies that we've seen and that are currently being proposed do the exact opposite of what we need in this economy, rendering the question of whether or not politicians simply don't understand what's happening out in the economy, or worse, they simply don't care.
Got it. Congressman Hill and Lindsey Piegza, great to have you on. Come back soon.
Great to be with you.